Block 1. Rain and Reckoning. The late shift at All Hours Vet Clinic always smelled the same. Wet fur overlaying the sharp sting of disinfectant, burnt coffee, and the particular desperation of pet owners at 3 a.m. I'd grown used to it over my 2 years as a veterinary technician, but tonight, the smell of rain was stronger, mixed with something metallic that clung to my scrubs, despite washing my hands 3 times after treating a terrier with a torn paw. Angel, lock up when you're done. Dr. Morrison grabbed his keys from the hook without looking at me. I've got surgery at 7. My back ached from the 12-hour shift. My hands were raw from constant scrubbing, and exhaustion pulled at my bones like an anchor dragging me down. I should have left an hour ago, but we were chronically short-staffed. And saying no wasn't really an option. Not when I had $3,000 due to my brother's bookies in 48 hours, and barely half that scraped together in cash. Got it, I said, wiping down the last exam table. Another Friday night. Another parade of sick cats, panicked dog owners, and emergencies that couldn't wait until morning. I dumped the cleaning supplies in the back room and grabbed my jacket. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. The rain hit me the second I pushed through the rear exit. Heavy, August rain that smelled like hot asphalt and ozone. Our back alley was a narrow strip of cracked pavement between dumpsters, barely lit by a single flickering bulb that had needed replacing for 3 months. I was fishing for my car keys when I tripped. My sneaker caught on something solid, and I went down hard on one knee, hands slapping wet concrete. Jesus! The curse died in my throat. A man lay slumped against the dumpster, one arm folded over his side, the other stretched out like he'd been reaching for something. Even in the dark, I could see the liquid pooling beneath him was darker than rainwater. Blood. My medical training kicked in before conscious thought could catch up. I dropped to my knees beside him, fingers automatically searching for a pulse at his throat. Thready. Weak. Maybe 40 beats per minute. Sir? Can you hear me? His head turned slightly. Even half-conscious and dying, there was something commanding in the movement. The security light caught his face. Sharp cheekbones. A strong jaw darkened with stubble, dark hair plastered to his forehead by rain and sweat. His suit was immaculate except for the growing crimson stain spreading across his white shirt. A suit that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Hospital, I said, already pulling my phone from my pocket. I'm calling. No. His hand shot out and caught my wrist. His grip was iron despite the blood loss, fingers wrapping completely around my bones. No hospitals. No police. I stared at him. His eyes were dark, nearly black in the shadows, and completely lucid despite the pallor of his skin. There was no fear in them, just cold calculation. You're bleeding out, I said. You need a trauma surgeon, not a... You. His accent was thick, Italian, each word deliberate. You fix animals, yes? Tonight, you fix me. That's not how this works. I can't... My men are watching. They see ambulance, they kill everyone inside. His thumb pressed against my pulse point. Including you, Angela Clover. My blood turned to ice. He knew my name. My real name. How do you... Help me inside. It wasn't a request. I should have run. Should have called 911 anyway and let the chips fall. But something in his voice, that absolute certainty that I would obey, overrode every rational impulse. That, and the distant sound of car engines idling at both ends of the alley. I wedged my shoulder under his arm and half dragged, half carried him through the back door. He was heavy, solid muscle under the expensive fabric, and every step left a trail of blood across the linoleum I'd just mopped. The fluorescent lights in the exam room buzzed to life, harsh and clinical. I lowered him onto the steel table meant for 70-pound retrievers, and he grunted but didn't cry out. "This is insane," I muttered, pulling on fresh gloves with shaking hands. "I don't have the right equipment. I don't have—" "You have enough." He was watching me with those dark, predatory eyes. "I've seen your records, Angel. Top 5% at Johns Hopkins before you disappeared. Trauma rotation, surgical specialty." My hands froze over the supply cabinet. "Who the hell are you?" "Vincent Caruso." He said it like I should recognize the name. When I didn't react, something like approval crossed his face. "You really have been hiding." I grabbed scissors and began cutting away his shirt. The wound was a through-and-through gunshot just below his ribs on the right side. The exit wound was larger, messier. He was losing blood fast. "This is veterinary equipment," I said, laying out sutures, clamps, gauze. "For dogs and cats. You could die from infection. You could die, period. Then work faster." For the next hour, I forgot everything except the rhythm of emergency medicine. Irrigation, debridement, suturing tissue layers I hadn't touched since my surgical rotation 3 years ago. My hands stopped shaking after the first 5 minutes. Muscle memory took over. Find the bleeders, stop the hemorrhage, close the wound. Vincent Caruso didn't make a sound. Not when I flushed the wound. Not when I stitched through tissue without local anesthetic beyond what I'd scrounged from the veterinary supplies. He just watched me work with those unnerving eyes, his jaw tight, but his breathing steady. "You're good at this," he said when I finally tied off the last suture. "I used to be." I stripped off the bloody gloves and threw them in the hazard bin. Before your brother's gambling debts destroyed your career." He sat up slowly, testing his mobility. "Carlo Vieri, $47,000 to the Molinari family. You took the fall for fraudulent prescriptions to pay it down. Medical board revoked your license before you finished residency." I backed up until I hit the counter. "How do you know that?" "I know everything about you, Angel." He slid off the table with surprising grace for someone who'd been dying 20 minutes ago. "I know you work here illegally under a fake certificate. I know you live in that apartment on Ashwood with the broken lock you can't afford to fix. I know you're 2 months behind on your payments to the Molinari family, and they're losing patience." He moved closer. Not threatening, but inevitable, like a wave rolling to shore. "And I know," he said softly, "that in about 16 hours, they're planning to collect their debt the permanent way." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you saved my life tonight." He reached into his jacket, the one folded on the chair, somehow still pristine, and pulled out a gold signet ring. He set it on the exam table between us. "And I always pay my debts." Then he walked to the door, moving like a man who hadn't just had a bullet wound stitched closed with veterinary supplies. "Lock this behind me," he said, "and go home, Angel. Get some sleep." "Wait, what does that mean? What debt?" But he was already gone, disappearing into the rain-soaked alley like a ghost. I stood alone in the exam room, surrounded by bloody gauze and the lingering scent of copper. The gold ring gleamed under the fluorescent lights. When I picked it up, I saw an engraved crest, a lion holding a sword. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Go home. Sleep. Tomorrow, everything changes." I should have run then, should have grabbed what cash I had and disappeared. Instead, I locked the door, stumbled to my car, and drove home through empty streets, the gold ring burning a hole in my pocket. I woke to silence. Not the normal silence of my shabby apartment. There was usually traffic noise, the neighbor's TV through thin walls, the rattle of pipes. This was different, heavy, expectant. The clock read 9:47 a.m. I'd slept through my alarm. I rolled out of bed, every muscle protesting, and padded to the window. My apartment was on the second floor, overlooking a quiet suburban street. Cookie-cutter houses, minivans in driveways. The most exciting thing that happened here was the neighborhood watch meetings. I pulled back the curtain and froze. My street had been transformed into a military zone. Black SUVs lined both sides, parked with precision, blocking every intersection. Men in dark suits stood at intervals, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, their postures identical, hands clasped, eyes hidden behind sunglasses despite the overcast morning. A single black armored car sat in my driveway. My heart stopped, then started again, hammering against my ribs. Tomorrow, everything changes. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. No signal. They'd jammed it. A knock echoed through the apartment. 3 precise raps. I stood frozen in my oversized sleep shirt and bare feet, staring at my front door like it might explode. The knock came again. Patient. Inevitable. I crossed the room on numb legs and looked through the peephole. Vincent Caruso stood in my hallway, immaculate in a fresh black suit. No trace of last night's near-death experience, except for a slight stiffness in his posture. Behind him, 2 of his men waited like statues. I opened the door a crack. "Good morning, Angel." His voice was warm, almost pleasant, like we were old friends. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About the 300 men I have surrounding your house." He smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd already won. "And about how you're never going back to hiding again." I let him in because refusing didn't seem like an option when 300 armed men controlled my street. Vincent moved through my shabby apartment like he owned it, his expensive shoes silent on my worn carpet. His men stayed in the hallway, but I could feel their presence like a weight pressing against my door. "Coffee?" I asked, because my brain had short-circuited into absurd politeness. "No, thank you." He settled onto my thrift store couch with the ease of someone accustomed to command. "Sit, Angel, please." I perched on the edge of my kitchen chair, still in my sleep shirt, feeling exposed and ridiculous. "What do you want?" "To save your life." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "The Molinari family planned to collect your brother's debt this morning. They were going to start with you. Make him watch." The room tilted. "How do you—" "I've had people watching you for 3 weeks. Since I first learned about the brilliant medical student who vanished into veterinary clinics and fake identities." His dark eyes held mine. "You've been on my radar for a while, Angel. Last night just accelerated the timeline." "I don't understand." "Your brother's debt is gone. Paid in full as of 6 a.m. this morning." He said it casually, like he'd picked up my dry cleaning. "Carlo is free to continue his pathetic existence. The Molinari family will not touch him." Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt dizzy. Then suspicion crept in behind it. "Why? What's the price?" "You." Vincent stood, closing the distance between us. "I need a doctor, Angel. Someone brilliant. Someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who exists outside the system, who won't ask questions when my men arrive bleeding at 3 a.m. I'm not a doctor anymore. You performed flawless trauma surgery last night with veterinary supplies." He was close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "You're more of a doctor than most with licenses. And now you belong to me." "That's not how this works. You can't just— I own your brother's life." His voice dropped, soft and deadly. "I can give it back to the Molinari family whenever I choose, or I can protect it. Protect you both. All you have to do is say yes." My hands clenched in my lap. "And if I say no? Then I leave. The SUVs disappear. And by tonight, you'll both be dead." He touched my chin, tilting my face up. "Choose, Angel. Hide and die, or live and be free." The villa rose from the countryside like something out of a dream. All honey-colored stone and terracotta tiles, surrounded by manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than my yearly salary. Vincent's hand rested on the small of my back as he guided me through iron gates that whispered shut behind us with mechanical precision. I'd packed one duffel bag. Everything I owned fit into one duffel bag. It sat in the trunk of the armored car like evidence of how small my life had become. This way. Vincent led me through marble halls hung with oil paintings of stern-faced men who shared his dark eyes and sharp jaw. Ancestors, probably. Generations of Carusos who'd built this empire on blood and secrets. We stopped before a set of double doors on the east wing. He pushed them open, and I forgot to breathe. The infirmary was a cathedral to medicine. Surgical lights gleamed overhead. Stainless steel tables waited like altars. Glass front cabinets held supplies I'd dreamed about during those desperate nights at the vet clinic. Real surgical instruments, medications I hadn't touched since Hopkins, diagnostic equipment that belonged in a level 1 trauma center. "It's yours," Vincent said behind me. "Everything you need, no expense spared." I walked forward slowly, trailing my fingers over the autoclave, the ventilator, the crash cart with its neat rows of emergency drugs. My throat tightened. "This is too much. This is what you deserve." He moved to a cabinet and pulled out a white coat. My name was embroidered over the pocket in gold thread. Dr. Angel Clover. "You gave up your career for your brother. I'm giving it back." "I'm not a doctor," I whispered, but my hands reached for the coat anyway. "You are in my world." He held it open, and I slipped my arms through sleeves that fit perfectly. "Here. You practice medicine without boards, without bureaucracy, without anyone telling you what you can and cannot do. You save lives on your terms." I turned to face him, and something shifted in his expression. Softer, almost vulnerable. "This is a cage," I said. "Yes." He didn't deny it. "But it's a golden one, Angel, and the view is beautiful." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the estate stretched endlessly. Gardens, vineyards, freedom wrapped in silk and surveillance. I touched the embroidered name on my chest. "When does my first patient arrive?" His smile was pure satisfaction. "Tonight." Vincent found me in the infirmary at midnight, organizing supplies with the obsessive focus of someone avoiding bigger thoughts. He leaned against the door frame, watching me arrange instruments by size and function, creating order in a life that had spiraled into chaos. "You alphabetize the medications," he observed. "Force of habit." I didn't look up. "In the ER, seconds matter. You need to know where everything is." "You were exceptional in the ER." He moved closer, his footsteps deliberate. "Your attending at Hopkins called you a natural, said you had instincts that couldn't be taught." My hands stilled over a box of gauze. "You read my evaluations?" "I read everything, Angel." He pulled a folder from inside his jacket and set it on the steel table between us. My name was printed on the tab. "Your transcripts, recommendation letters, incident reports. I know you graduated summa cum laude. I know you were accepted into the surgical residency program at Mass General, one of 5 candidates out of 300 applicants." I stared at the folder like it might bite me. "Then you know why I never went." "Carlo's gambling started in your 3rd year of med school. Small bets at first, poker games, sports betting, nothing you couldn't help him manage." Vincent opened the folder, revealing documents I'd tried to forget. "But then he got involved with loan sharks, the Molinari family. By the time you realized how deep he was, he owed $47,000. "Stop." My voice cracked. "You took out student loans you couldn't afford, picked up extra shifts, sold everything valuable you owned. But it wasn't enough." He pulled out another document, my board hearing transcript. "So you started writing prescriptions, Oxy, Percocet, selling them to pay down his debt." Tears burned behind my eyes. "He's my brother. He's all I have left." I know. Vincent's voice softened. Your parents died when you were 19. You raised Carlo yourself while putting yourself through college and medical school. You sacrificed everything for him. And he kept gambling. The words tasted like ash. Even after I lost my license. Even after I had nothing left to give. Vincent reached across the table and caught my hand. He didn't deserve your sacrifice, Angel. But I understand why you made it. Loyalty to family, even when they don't deserve it. That's something I respect. I looked up at him through blurred vision. Why does any of this matter to you? Because I need someone loyal. And you've already proven you'll burn your whole life down to protect the people you love. They came at 2 a.m., voices echoing through the villa's halls like thunder. I jolted awake in my new bedroom, all silk sheets and antique furniture that cost more than my education, and pulled on clothes with shaking hands. The infirmary doors burst open before I reached them. 6 men in suits carried a seventh on a makeshift stretcher, his white shirt soaked crimson. Vincent appeared behind them, his face carved from stone. Gunshot wound, abdomen, 20 minutes ago. His eyes met mine. This is Marco Santoro, my underboss. The man on the table was maybe 50, gray at the temples, his face twisted in agony. But it was the 3 other men filing into the room who made my blood run cold. Older men, dressed in expensive suits, their expressions carved from ice. They positioned themselves along the wall like a tribunal. The commission, Vincent said quietly. They want to see if you're worth the investment. My hands trembled as I pulled on gloves. An audience. A test. A man dying while the family's leadership watched to see if I'd fail. Everyone out except Vincent, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. One of the older men stepped forward. We stay. We watch. Then Marco dies. I met his gaze without flinching. You want to supervise or you want him to live? Choose. Tension crackled through the room. The man's jaw tightened, and I thought he might refuse. Then Vincent spoke, his voice carrying absolute authority. She's right. Everyone out. Now. They left, but I felt their presence like pressure against the walls. Vincent stayed, positioning himself where he could assist but not interfere. Talk to me, he said. Entry wound lower right quadrant, no exit wound. My fingers probed gently while Marco groaned. Bullet still inside, possible liver involvement, definite intestinal perforation. He needs a hospital, Vincent. A real surgeon. He has one. Vincent's hand settled on my shoulder, warm and steadying. You can do this, Angel. I know you can. I looked at Marco's gray face, at the blood pooling beneath him, at my hands that hadn't performed abdominal surgery in 3 years. Every instinct screamed that I wasn't qualified, wasn't ready, wasn't enough. Then I remembered Hopkins, remembered the feeling of a scalpel in my hand and the elegant logic of anatomy, remembered who I used to be before Carlo's choices stole my future. Scalpel, I said. Vincent placed it in my palm like a benediction. I cut. I found Vincent on the terrace at midnight, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses waiting like he'd known I'd come. Marco was stable, sleeping under sedation in the recovery room. The commission had left without a word, but their approval hung in the air like smoke. You should be sleeping, Vincent said, pouring deep red wine into crystal that caught the moonlight. So should you. I took the glass he offered, my hand still aching from 4 hours of surgery. Does it ever stop? The violence? No. He was honest, at least. This is the life. Blood and loyalty and choosing which sins you can live with. I sipped the wine, something expensive that tasted like cherries and smoke. Why do you want me here, Vincent? Really, you could have any doctor. Someone with an active license. Someone without baggage. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out over the dark gardens. Then he shrugged off his jacket and began unbuttoning his shirt. "What are you—" He turned, letting the shirt fall open. In the moonlight, I saw the roadmap of violence carved into his skin. A puckered scar below his collarbone, another slashing across his ribs, burns on his shoulder that looked like cigarette marks, too many to count. "My father did these," he said quietly. "Starting when I was 8, he said scars built character, that a Caruso who couldn't tolerate pain was worthless." My breath caught. I set down my wine and moved closer, my doctor's eye cataloging old injuries, imagining the child who'd endured them. "He's dead now," Vincent continued. "Heart attack 5 years ago. And everyone expected me to continue his legacy. The brutality, the casual cruelty, the empire built on breaking people. But you don't want that. I want something different." He caught my hand, pressing it flat against the burn scars. "I want doctors instead of butchers. I want loyalty earned through protection, not fear. I want to build something that doesn't require destroying everything beautiful." His skin was warm beneath my palm, his heartbeat steady and strong. "Why tell me this?" "Because you understand sacrifice. You understand what it means to want something better than what you were given." He covered my hand with his. "And because when you look at me, you don't see a monster. You see a patient." "You're more than that now," I whispered. His smile was sad and hopeful at once. "So are you, Angel." The explosion shattered the night 3 days later. I was checking Marco's vitals when the windows blew inward, glass raining like daggers across the infirmary floor. Alarms screamed. Gunfire erupted somewhere in the east wing. Vincent burst through the door, blood streaming from a gash on his temple. "We're under attack." "Molinari's men. Someone gave them our security codes." "A mole." I grabbed gauze, pressing it to his head. "How many?" 20 that we've counted. Maybe more." He tried to push past me, but his leg buckled. I caught him, and my hand came away red. "You're shot." "Grazed." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding through your pants, Vincent. Sit down." Another explosion rocked the villa. Closer this time. Men were shouting in Italian, some giving orders, others screaming. Vincent's men were fighting back, but we were outnumbered. "The panic room," Vincent said through gritted teeth as I cut away his pant leg. "3rd floor. You need to—" "I need to stop this bleeding." The bullet had carved a channel through his thigh, missing the femoral artery by centimeters. Lucky. But he was losing blood fast. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Vincent pulled a gun from his shoulder holster and aimed at the door, his hand steady despite the pain. "How many exits?" I asked, working frantically to pack the wound. "2. Both probably compromised by now." I looked around the infirmary. My beautiful cage, now a trap. Then I saw it. The supply closet. Deep enough for 2 people if they didn't mind being intimate. "Can you stand?" "Yes." "Then, move." I hauled him up, letting him lean his weight on me. We stumbled into the closet just as the infirmary doors crashed open. I pulled Vincent against me in the darkness, one hand over his mouth, the other pressing gauze to his leg to muffle any sound of dripping blood. Through the crack in the door, I watched 3 men in tactical gear systematically destroy my infirmary, smashing equipment, overturning tables, searching. One moved toward our hiding place. Vincent's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing once. A message. "Trust me." I held my breath and prayed to gods I'd stopped believing in years ago. The man's radio crackled. "Target's not here. Move to the 2nd floor." They left. Vincent sagged against me, and I felt his blood soaking warm through my shirt. The siege lasted 4 hours. By dawn, 17 of Molinari's men were dead, and the traitor, one of Vincent's own captains, had been dragged before the commission with a bullet in each kneecap. Vincent wanted to handle the interrogation himself, but he could barely stand. "You need surgery," I said, blocking the infirmary door with my body. His men had cleared the room, replaced the shattered windows with temporary boards. Sunrise filtered through the cracks, painting everything gold and red. "After I deal with—" "Now, Vincent." My voice carried an authority I didn't know I possessed. "You want to torture that man? Fine. But you'll do it after I've repaired your leg, or you'll bleed out before you get answers." The commission members exchanged glances. No one spoke to Vincent Caruso that way. No one gave him orders. He stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. A genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "You heard the doctor. I'll see our guest in an hour." They left us alone. I prepped the surgical field in silence, my hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. Despite the fact that I'd spent 4 hours in a closet holding a mafia boss while his empire burned around us. "You could have run," Vincent said as I numbed his leg. "During the attack, you could have slipped out in the chaos." I thought about it. I made the first incision, my hands remembering the elegant dance of surgery. For about 30 seconds, then I realized I had nowhere to go. "Your brother is alive because of you, and I'm alive because of this." I gestured at the infirmary, at the surgical tools that fit my hands like they'd been waiting for me. "You gave me back the only thing I ever loved, Vincent. Medicine without compromise, the ability to save lives on my own terms. Even if those lives belong to criminals, everyone deserves a chance to live." That's what I learned at Hopkins. I tied off a bleeder with practiced precision. "Besides, who said I was working for criminals? I work for you." He caught my wrist, pulling my attention from the wound to his face. "And what am I to you, Angel?" I thought about the gold ring still in my pocket. About Marco, breathing steadily in the recovery room. About the man who'd burned his childhood into scars and still chose to build something gentler. "You're my patient," I said. "My employer, my—" "Your equal," he finished. I smiled and returned to my sutures. "Yes, that too. Thank you for staying until the end. That means more than you think." If this story touched something inside you, subscribe, like, and tell me what you felt in the comments. I read every single one because this isn't just storytelling, it's connection. And if you're ready for the next journey, don't wander too far. The next story is already waiting in the dark.